Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayuran Amadava Punyabihari Jayuran Amadava Punyabihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. One question, Subha Vilas Prabhu, and mine, it doesn't say you're recording. Should I do that? Can you do that and send me the link? What can we do?
I'm telecasting on Zoom. Sorry, YouTube, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Will that be okay?
So it's recorded and it'll be recorded on YouTube. You can send me the
Yes,
link.
sure. Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. So Ramesh, should I just jump in or what's your system in Transcendental Tempa Sangha?
I'd like to introduce you a little bit because I think the devotees here mostly don't know who you are.
Okay.
So everyone can understand His Grace, Anuttama Prabhu. He lives in the Potomac area, near Washington, D.C. And he first joined ISKCON in Denver, Colorado in 1975. He served there for a number of years and become the president in 1983. And he started, I guess, the Food for Life program, distributing 10,000 free meals a month to the homeless and needy. He also hosted the Festival of India and other festivals there, joining in different parades and hosting the Rath Yatra. And then in 2000, he joined the GBC body and served as the chairman in 2014-2015. He's also served as temple president there in Potomac, Washington, D.C. And he's currently the International Director of Communications, which post he's held for nearly 20 years. So he is our governing body director here in Tampa, and we wish to welcome you. Thank you for joining us. I know he plans to personally visit in October, so we'll look forward to that.
All right, well, thank you, Ramya Prabhu. Let me begin by offering my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So it's nice to be with you all this morning. I actually gave a little class in India. There was something they call the Value Education Olympiad in 2021. That started at 4 o'clock this morning, our time. So it's nice to be on a call where I can say good morning and everybody's experiencing morning, as opposed to say good morning when there's afternoon and evening and tomorrow morning and everything else on there. So nice to be with everyone this morning. So, yeah, and I am looking forward to seeing everyone. A trip, hopefully, coming to Florida in October. I'll just mention one thing briefly because it's important. Yesterday, I was on a phone call with many of the regional leaders in our part of the United States, which ranges from Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, over to Chicago, St. Louis, New Vrindavan, down to Florida. And just urge everyone, especially those of you that are in the Tampa area, you're aware that the COVID-19 is on an upswing. Florida is one of the states that hardest hit. And while we ultimately always depend upon Krishna, we know Prabhu says in the Bhagavad Gita, God helps those that helps themselves. So please don't be foolish. Take all precautions necessary to keep yourselves healthy. We've already lost too many wonderful and magnificent devotees to this pandemic, and we don't need to lose any more. We've got important work to do, and we need you all to be with us as long as possible. And I know we've had recently, the New Vrindavan community had to shut down for a few days because of COVID. The Radhadesh community in Belgium shut down for a few days. The Tucson community shut down. So please don't take this lightly. It's important we take care of our bodies. They're gifts to us given by Krishna. It's important we take care of them to engage them in the Lord's service. So I was going to read his name, Ramya Prabhu, because one of the qualities of the Vaishnavas is they're merciful. He was very merciful. He said, you can choose any verse you like. So of course that led to a lot of confusion. How do you just pick a verse? There's so many beautiful verses. So somehow I was drawn to my copy of, well, let's see, how does this work here with this crazy, let's see, I'll do this. I was drawn to this beautiful Prayers of Queen Kunti, this wonderful book, of course, taken from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I want to read a verse from here. It's Bhagavatam 1.836. If you have that, you can look there. Or if you have the teachings of Queen Kunti, you can look in that book. I'm going to read in the teachings of Queen Kunti, it's the Bhagavatam purport and then lecture. I'm not actually sure, perhaps maybe more than one lecture put together from Prabhupada on this verse. But I'm going to read some sections from both those and then have a few minutes of comment, and hopefully we can open up for discussion. If that's possible, that would be more than welcome. So why don't we start? I'll just read the Sanskrit once, and then maybe we can do the English only in a call and response fashion. Sometimes that's easier with Zoom. So, oh, what an expert technical master of Zoom we have here. Thank you, Subhavilas Prabhu. So there's the verse. You can all just follow along. Let's start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Okay, so the verse 1.836. Shrinvanti Gayanti Grinacha Bhikshnashaha Smaranti Nandanti Devehitam Janaha Taeva Pasyanti Achirena Tavakam Pava Pava Ho Paramam Pradambujam. Translation. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which can alone stop the repetition of birth and death. So let's all repeat that. You can be muted or not muted, but let's all repeat that together in unison. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. Jai. So now, purport by Srila Prabhupada. And Subhavilas Prabhu, we're going to read the first paragraph. And then we're going to read a little bit from the prayers of Queen Kunti. So we'll follow this first paragraph at least, okay? The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna cannot be seen by our present conditional vision. In order to see him, one has to change his present vision by developing a different condition of life full of spontaneous love of Godhead. When Sri Krishna was personally present on the face of the globe, not everyone could see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Materialists like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Shishupal were highly qualified personalities by acquisition of material assets, but they were unable to appreciate the presence of the Lord. Therefore, even though the Lord may be present before our eyes, it is not possible to see him unless we have the necessary vision. This necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service only, beginning with hearing about the Lord from the right sources. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the popular literatures which are generally heard, chanted, repeated, etc., by the people in general. But in spite of such hearing, etc., sometimes it is experienced that the performer of such devotional service does not see the Lord face to face. The reason is that the first item, Shravana, is very important. If hearing is from the right sources, it acts very quickly. Generally, people hear from unauthorized persons. Such unauthorized persons may be very learned by academic qualifications, but because they do not follow the principles of devotional service, hearing from them becomes a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, first one should select a sincere, competent, and bona fide speaker, and then hear from him. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way. So now here I'm going to jump to the teachings of Queen Kunti. Just read a short paragraph or two from Prabhupada's further commentary. He writes, in the previous verses, Kunti Devi has explained that those who have come to this material world are working very hard like asses and have such a hard burden that they cannot bear it. Because their lusty desires have created heavy work that puts them always in trouble, Krishna comes to introduce the system by which one can get relief from this continuously troublesome life. Now, how are we to get free from these tribulations? Krishna comes to free us from them by giving us Bhakti Yoga. Krishna recommends do this, and if we do it, we shall get relief. Prahlad Maharaj mentions that this Bhakti Yoga consists of 9 items: hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them. Thank you for pulling this up. Serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto him. In other words, serving him with the mind, body, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. And then we'll end there. Thank you, Prabhu. And there Prabhupada is quoting from Prahlad Maharaj. So, Om Gyanatamyandasya Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshur Om Manitamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to try to say a few things about Lord Krishna. Here, Kunti Devi, she's glorifying the process of hearing and chanting. And we also have our own limited experience how when we hear and chant about Krishna, we get purified and it brings us pleasure. Of course, sometimes that pleasure is described if you eat a sweet ball with cotton wrapped around your tongue, it's a little hard to taste. But slowly, we unwrap the cotton around our tongue and we can taste the sweetness of the sweet ball. So in the same way as we go on in Krishna consciousness, as we become a little bit more purified day by day, we begin to relish more and more the pastimes of the Lord. So here in this beautiful verse from Queen Kunti, and of course, she's a very famous person in Vedic culture. Even outside of the Vaishnav circle, Kunti is well known. She's the queen of King Pandu, who is the emperor of the world, and she's the mother of the 5 Pandavas. Very illustrious position. These days, modern world, somebody, maybe you're the queen or the president of the country, so you're well known for a few years, and then you kind of pass out of people's vision. But the emperor position, pretty special for life. Her husband is the emperor, very, very important position, very powerful. But the message of Queen Kunti is that even despite her position, she had a very difficult life. Queen Kunti had a very difficult life. She lost her first child. Her husband died at a very young age, leaving her a widow. She was left to raise her 5 children alone. We hear so much about single moms these days, of how difficult it is to be a single mom, and it is. She had 5 children to raise. Not only that, these children were surrounded by rivals. The Kauravas, they consider themselves almost enemies, even at that early age of the Pandavas. Later, she and her sons were banished for 13 years into the forest. So many difficulties were there. And in the previous verse, let's see, I think I have this here. In the previous verse, Queen Kunti herself describes a little more some of these tribulations she has. Let me see if I have marked my book in the right place. She says, text 24, "My dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poisoned cake, from a great fire, from cannibals." That's an interesting one. All of us have problems we face, right? We have nasty lawyers or landlords or bankers or fellow employees or bosses or so many things. Very few of us are struggling with cannibals. So we can just see we may have so many problems, but we don't have cannibals. So Kunti, cannibals from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashvatam. So she's speaking to Krishna after Krishna saved them from Ashvatam. So Kunti recognizes that the world is full of troubles. And she's explaining this, but she's going on to say, because she's talking to Krishna face to face. This is quite interesting. Krishna's there and she's speaking to him face to face. And there's a lot to learn for us about what did she say to Krishna? What did she ask for from Krishna? And we know there's the story of the old woman who was in the forest carrying a very heavy bundle of wood. And somehow she slipped and the bundle fell from her back. And she was in her pain and her anxiety. She was crying, "Dear Lord, dear God, oh Vishnu, please come, help me, help me, help me." And she was so sincere that the Lord came in front of her and he asked her, "What is it you desire? What can I do? How can I help you?" And in her tears, she said, "Oh Lord, thank you for coming. I'm so unfortunate. I'm trying to carry this heavy load and it slipped off my back. Can you please pick it up and put it back on my back so I continue with my journey?" So this is the fate of foolish people. Sometimes even religious people, we have a chance, we go to church, temple, mosque, synagogue, we pray to God, and oftentimes we ask, "Please give me more burdens." But Kunti was not like that. She's a great, great, great acharya for us. She's one of the greatest women saints, certainly in our tradition. And the whole section of the Bhagavatam is there with her teachings. Very, very important section of the Bhagavatam. So she's seen Krishna face to face, and what is she asking for? Of course, famously, in another verse, not the one we're looking at today, she went so far as to say, "Krishna, give me more troubles." After listening to them, cannibals, fire, exile, she goes on and says, "Please give us more troubles." But again, we're not going to talk about that one today. But what she does, the verse we're looking at now, is in front of Krishna, she takes this opportunity to appreciate him and to confirm the importance for her and for all of us to be hearing and to be chanting about the Lord. And she's saying that by doing so, this actually ends this process of birth and death. All of our suffering can come to an end if we hear and chant about Krishna. And of course, we know this is confirmed in so many places in the Vedic literatures, especially in all of our Vaishnava literatures. Bhagavad Gita 8:16, the Lord says that the whole world, from the topmost planet down to the lowest, topmost planet, not the topmost house, not the topmost country, not the topmost income, just like these days, Jeff Bezos and Richard, what's his name, who owns Virgin Land, all the billionaires, they want to go into space, right? That's the new trend for the billionaires. They want to go into space. But Krishna says, not even space will make you happy. Even Brahma's planet won't make you happy, because they're all places of misery, because there's birth and death. That's the Lord's conclusion. So Kunti is expressing the same point, and therefore she's not just asking the Lord to remove the bundle, but she's talking about solutions. This is the nature of great saintly persons. They don't continue, they don't perpetuate our existence in this material world. They try to help alleviate us from the burdens of this life by connecting to the overall solution. Not a temporary solution, but the permanent solution. That's what we're really interested in. Of course, there's difficulties here and there, and we oftentimes, we have to live, we have to be practical. We seek solutions to some of the short-term problems we face, but we want to primarily focus to see on what's the actual solution to end all of the difficulties there. So Srila Prabhupada explains here and in previous verses that it's not just Kunti. Everyone is struggling. Every living being is struggling. And what's the solution? The solution is not just to get a bigger house or to make more money or to be the topper in our college. Those are all nice things to have, to achieve, but they won't make us happy. They're not the formula for making us satisfied. This is radical information, actually. When Prabhupada came to the West, he was bringing radical information. Of course, the same information is there in all the great spiritual traditions of the world, but it becomes forgotten. People begin to follow spiritual practices, religious practices for superficial purposes. They think the goal is to go to the temple and stand in front of the deity and say some nice prayers and have a wonderful prasadam and go home. Or is it described to go to the holy rivers and take bath without hearing from the saintly persons there? Or to go to church and pray, dear God, please purify me from the sins of the previous week. And this Prabhupada says to go out and do them again. No, the purpose of the church, the mosque, the temple is to actually purify ourselves, to awaken our original spiritual consciousness. So here Kunti is expressing that the solution is to hear and chant about Krishna, to purify ourselves, and to awaken our love of God. And that's essential. So as Vaishnavas, sometimes people may ask us, well, why you put so much emphasis on this? And we have a very deep explanation of that, because that's our original position. We are all by nature, by eternal constitution, just I'm looking at a few faces here. We're not young people. We're not old people. We're not people of European descent or Indian descent or African descent. These are all superfluous to us. That's just this body. That's just this covering. It's the machine we have. But the person on the inside, the consciousness, who we really are, is we're all servants of and eternal lovers of God. We are people meant to love God and to serve God. And when that's woken up, then we become happy. And now we're covered by different types of misunderstandings. And the first and foremost of those is the sense that I am this body, and the sense that by gratifying the body, that it's going to make me happy. But Krishna says in the Gita, we're all overcome by desire and hate. We're desiring things we think will give us pleasure, and we're trying to avoid the things we think will make us suffer. But we all have practical experience. Sometimes we work very hard. You make some money, you go to the store, you buy something you think is going to make you happy. Then you get it home and you realize, oh, actually, it's not so nice. I should have got the other one. It's too small, or it's too big, or I don't like the color. It doesn't match what I thought it was going to match. And now I got to send it back again. I got to try to get another one. And then, it goes on and on and on. And therefore it describes in the Gita, everyone's captured by hankering. Our mind I was talking with a good friend of mine, David Prastar Prabhu in Washington, D.C. the other day on the phone. And he was telling me a few years ago, he came to this understanding. He was watching how his mind was constantly, moment to moment, practically giving him instructions. Oh, you need this. You need to go here. You should go there. How come you didn't do this? And he was thinking, I've been serving my mind for so many years. Never once has my mind told me, thank you, did a good job. Now we'll be peaceful. Anybody's mind ever said that? Oh, that was very good. Now let's be peaceful for a day or two or a week or a month. The mind doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. You can endeavor. Maybe there's some nice place you want to go with your family on a vacation, and you raise the money and you plan it all out and you buy the plane tickets and you go and you fight through the traffic and you rent the car and you drive to the top of the mountain, you drive to the beach, you get everything set up nicely. And then your mind says, what does it say to you? Does it say, oh, this is gorgeous, just stay here? No, the mind says, I'm hungry, get lunch out. And then you get lunch out and the mind go, oh, where's the pakoras? We forgot the pakoras. How did we forget the pakoras? Etc. We've all seen that happen so many times. We've all seen it. So therefore, Kunti is very concerned because she's telling us all, we have to be careful not to misuse the time we have. We have this human form of life. We have a certain amount of energy. We have a certain amount of bodily strength. We have a certain amount of words we can speak, certain amount of intelligence, discrimination, certain amount of money, so many things. We should be careful not to just chase what are described as like figments of our imagination. And the Bhagavatam gives a powerful analogy on this. I find it's almost frightening, the analogy he gives of the deer. We've all seen deer. They're such beautiful animals, but somehow the deer wanders to the edge of the desert and it looks off into the distant sand because it's thirsty and it thinks, oh, look, there's water. There's no water in the desert, but because of the mirage, the deer runs after the water. When he gets to that place where the water was supposed to be, there's no water. We've all had experience of this in the summer. You're driving your car down the highway. You look off in the distance, oh, there's a lake out there? How's there a lake in the middle of the road? There's no lake. It's a mirage. Now, a foolish person might say, oh, pull over, put on your bathing suit, get out the beach ball. Where's the towels? Where's the sun lotion? There's water ahead. An intelligent person just goes, no, it's a mirage. Don't pay any attention to it. So in the same way, Kunti is describing to us, please don't be like the deer. And this is not just Shastra. Some of us may be people, okay, Shastra's there, but where's the evidence for this? There's so many scientific research these days. I just spent a few minutes before the class, so many studies recently over the last 10, 20 years about does more material opulence make us happy? And they've done scientific research up to a certain point. If you don't have enough money for a roof over your head, if you can't feed yourself and feed your family, basic security, yes, if those material things aren't there, it leads to unhappiness. But over and above that, even science has confirmed it doesn't make people any happier. And we see that some of the richest, most famous people in the world, 20 years of marriage, they're still getting divorced. They're still moving their homes. They're still having trouble with drug addiction and alcoholism and suicide even sometimes and depression, even though they have so many things. 10 houses in the most beautiful places in the world, they're not happy. The most beautiful wife, the most famous husband in the world, they're not happy. So most people just think, oh, well, what can you do? Just keep going on. Vaishnavas stop and think, spiritualists, but Vaishnavas especially. Hey, wait a minute. What's with this? I'm like the deer. I keep running after the mirage. Every time I get there, there's no water. And everybody around me is running for water, but they get there. The guy in the office with me has been talking for years about buying a new car. Now he got a new car. He's unhappy because he didn't get the stereo system in the car that he thought he was going to get, right? We've all seen these things, right? The lady, she saves up her money to buy a beautiful dress and she goes to the party. You don't see this with saris so much. Saris are more unique. But with the Western dress, they go to the party and then there's somebody else with the same dress. Oh my God, what a painful experience, right? Terrible. But I thought this dress was going to make me happy. Nope, it actually landed and ended up making me very miserable. So why? Why is this? Well, we know why, because we know we're not the body, And we're not the mind. The mind says, do this, go there, but that doesn't mean it's going to satisfy me. I was thinking a little bit about this idea that when we gratify the body or the mind, it doesn't really satisfy us. Of course, the Bhagavatam has this great explanation of the bird in the cage. We've all seen that picture. You can just imagine it. There's a bird in the cage, and the bird is like squawking because it's hungry, and the owner comes and polishes the cage. Does that make the bird happy? Maybe a little bit. Oh, now I have a nice cage, but I'm hungry. Bark, 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 feed me, feed me. The owner comes back, polishes the cage a little more. Oh, now you should be happy. Doesn't make us happy. So I was thinking, like, another analogy kind of came to my mind. You know, we can just imagine the man comes home from work. Could be role reversal, but let's say the traditional way. Man comes home from work, and the wife has got dinner nicely prepared for him. And he says, please, I'm so hungry. Where's dinner? And she says, I'll get it for you. Let me feed you. And she brings a nice pot of food and she throws it out on the ground. And you, wait, I'm hungry. I thought you were going to feed me. She says, yeah, I'm feeding you. And then she goes and throws the doll out on the ground. So what are you doing? Well, I'm feeding you. And then she throws the subji out on the ground. He goes, what are you, crazy? You're not feeding me. Well, why? Because he's here. If you put the food out on the lawn, okay, he's connected to the lawn. It doesn't satisfy him. So the same way, we have needs, the soul has needs, but we're trying to feed the body, feed the mind, feed the senses without feeding the needs of the self. Again, just imagine you going home and your wife or your husband, your husband says, oh, I cooked dinner for you tonight. Where we'll sit down, I'll serve you. And he brings the nice plate. He walks right past you and goes and throws it out the window. You think, why are you putting it over there? You didn't bring it to me. So in the same way, people, they're looking for happiness, but they're not feeding the soul. They're not feeding the soul. So therefore, the Vedanta Sutra, Tato Brahma Jignasa. It's time to inquire into the absolute truth. Where can I go? What can I do? What can I think about? What kind of activities? What can I speak about that's actually going to give me knowledge of who I am and how to satisfy myself? It's time to inquire how to purify myself. And there's so many teachings. It came to my mind, Lord Rishabdev was speaking to his sons, and he said, my dear sons, you have this rare form of human life. This is not the time just to try to satisfy the senses the way dogs and hogs do. We all see them. We live I think most of us here, right in America, Tampa, so many dogs. And the dogs are running around trying to satisfy their senses. So the great acharyas are saying, don't live like the dogs. The dog, he just chases after his different bodily pleasures. We're human beings. We're meant to stop and think, okay, this material object, maybe it brings some short-term gratification, but does it actually satisfy me? Does it actually take care of my inner needs? And we can see the world around us, and we know in our heart, we know from our previous experience, and we know from the Shastra that it can't. So therefore, Kunti, Devi, Queen Kunti, she's given us the key how we can actually make progress, how we can actually gradually awaken happiness, which is so simple, to hear and chant about Krishna. Why? Somebody, we're hearing and chant, but this is so superfluous. All you people do. I remember in Denver, Ramia mentioned I was in Denver years ago. We had one lady was coming by the temple, and she was just kind of a new person in Krishna consciousness. And she was talking about what she did. And she said, well, I have to work hard. I don't just sit around and pray all day long like you people do. And we had to explain to her, well, we don't, even the temple residents, the monastics, they don't sit around and pray. They're worshiping the deities. They're cooking. They're cleaning. They're going out, they're selling books, they're doing Harinam, they're holding festivals, so many things. And of course, members of our congregation, they're fulfilling so many different jobs and services during the day, but they're doing it alongside of hearing and chanting about Krishna. Why? Because when we hear and chant about Krishna, then we become purified, we become cleansed. And Krishna says, and the Shastra says, then everything that we're looking for, which we actually already have. This is an illusion of the world. We think we've lost something. Actually, Krishna's in our heart. He never leaves us. He's with us at every moment. but just we've turned our eyes away from him. So we need to purify our eyes with the salve of love of God, which comes through hearing and chanting, purify who we are, and then everything becomes very nice. Just like sometimes you come home and your home is very dirty and your mind is very disturbed, but you clean everything very nicely, then you feel peaceful. When we clean our heart and we awaken our connection with Krishna, then we become very peaceful. And a beautiful, beautiful aspect of our Vaishnava philosophy is no one is denied this opportunity. It's not because one's born in India or Bengal or Gujarat, or one is from South Asia, or one is African or Russian or white, brown, or black, or man or woman, or highly educated, or young or old. There's no material impediments, none. There's so many other ideas and philosophies in the world, and there's this tendency to kind of separate people. Our philosophy is the greatest unifying philosophy in the world. It's a bold statement, I'll make that. We don't always live up to it. That's different. But the principles that we teach, the opportunities that we have, I would, in a humble way, submit to anyone from any tradition that, not to say there aren't wonderful, beautiful traditions that also speak a love of God, etc. But the depth of what our teaching is so profound. And this vision of unity of everyone is really a wonderful contribution to the world. So I just want to make one last point, and then we'll kind of summarize. Sometimes people may think, even our own minds, we may think a little bit, well, this is very nice religious sentiment, but it's not very practical. 40 minutes you've been talking just about hearing, just telling people to hear and chant about Krishna. It's not very practical. There's so many problems in the world. We can't just hide from these things. Someone might think we can't just reject the world. We can't just run away and pray like this one lady was thinking we did. So someone say to me, wait, there's serious things that need tackled. How can you say just hear and chant about God all day long? That's not going to solve. What about the environmental crisis? I was just on this course this morning with a couple hundred students from India talking about value education and its impact on the environment. And I had to do a little research. We all know, the ice caps are melting and the temperature's going up, and there's so many fires and floods and droughts and hurricanes. So all you're going to do is hear and chant. Well, I would respond to that, whoa, I didn't say reject the world. Kunti didn't say reject the world. Her sons were the emperors. Arjuna didn't reject the world. Krishna gave the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita. Then what did Arjuna do? He went out and did what he did as a warrior, as a king. Yudhishthira, he didn't renounce everything. He had faced so many difficulties, but he took up the job as a king to try to rule as best he could. There's so many, many examples. So yes, we agree. There's many, many problems in this world. We face war. We face racism. We face crime. We face environmental disaster. So many problems are there. But then we ask, what's the cause of these problems? And what's the solution? We're not going to solve these problems just by, having a stronger army or by some scientific advancement. These problems we analyze, they come from us, just like there was a UN study released just this week, yet again, finally saying, hey, human society, you're causing the environmental problem. You can point the finger, try to blame everybody else, but we're the source of that problem. We need to change our behavior. So in the same way, all of these problems, war, crime, etc., where are they coming from? They're coming from the dirty hearts of people. Because we are controlled by anger, because we're controlled by our bitterness, by selfishness, by lust, by greed. As Gandhi said, there's plenty in the world for everyone's need, plenty. There's just not enough for everyone's greed. So materialistic idea, produce more, produce more, produce more. If we don't get rid of greed, we just end up with billionaires wanting to spend all their money, go to space, waste more money. We have to get rid of the greed that's in everyone's hearts. And then we can change our activities. So as Kunti is saying, hear and chant about Krishna, become devotees. It will purify us. It will awaken our love for Krishna, but it also helps us become better people. We bring down our selfishness. We bring down our self-centeredness. We bring down our pride. We calm down our anger and our envy and our greed and all these different things. Because as we become purified of these different qualities, we awaken our original pure consciousness. And we begin to act and to think and to speak a way that is actually loving and caring for others. So in that way, Kunti is offering both the most transcendently profound solution and the best practical solution. Because if we become devotees, or as devotees, if we seriously take up the process of hearing and chanting and all 9 processes of devotional service, we become better parents. We become better students. We become better employees. We become better employers. We become better citizens. We become better neighbors. Because we don't just think, this lawn, who cares about the lawn? Who cares about the house? It's all matter. That's not our philosophy. We think this house belongs to Krishna. This lawn belongs to Krishna. This driveway belongs to Krishna. I better keep it clean. It belongs to Krishna. I better be nice to people. They're parts and parcels of Krishna. I have to be kind because other living entities are ultimately their spirit souls. It's not, it describes in the Shastra, not that we see a rich person or a poor person or a short person or tall or fat. We see that, but we're meant to be trained to see the person within. And when we see the person within and we treat them like that, we treat them, every living entity is connected to Krishna, everything is sacred. Everyone should be treated with respect and compassion and concern. All of these big problems. If we're Krishna conscious, how can we be contributing to pollution? We won't walk out the door and add to the pollution. How can we contribute to the overconsumption? We're naturally going to live more simple lifestyles. We're naturally going to think about, turning off the light bulbs and recycling and minimizing our use. We're naturally going to bring down, crime. It's gradual. It's not that these things happen overnight, but as people become purified, these problems go away. So this is the conclusions of Queen Kunti. I'll end with just a wonderful quote from a recently published journal. I'll turn out my background again for just a minute so I can show it all to you. This is the new edition of the ISKCON Communications Journal, was just published earlier this year. It was printed for about 10 or 15 years and went out of print for some time. There's beautiful articles in here about Vaishnava Christian dialogue, about ethical practices. Nice article by Radhika Raman Prabhu, Professor Ravi Gupta about the environment. Nice article by Krishna Chetraswamy about cow protection. It said a lot of very good things. So in an article by Rasa Mandala Prabhu, who's working on his PhD in the UK on, I believe, ethical philosophy, something in that category, he writes, he quotes some Prabhupada who wrote, quote, "We must all become ideal in our character, and then people will be very impressed with such purity. A devotee is faultless. He has no flaws." So sometimes we think, not sometimes, we always should think, how can I preach? How can I share? How can I spread Krishna consciousness? Well, Prabhupada is adding to this point. People, they are attracted to us or sometimes turned away from us by our character. So we have to hear and chant and purify ourselves to awaken love of God, to minimize the misbehavior that's going on in the world, but also to make our communities more attractive to people so they'll want to come and take up Krishna consciousness. And last quote, this is one I hadn't read before till I read this article just a couple of days ago. This was written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1936. Actually, it's published in 1936, written much earlier. Obviously, he passed away before then. But he's writing about how when he was trying to spread Krishna consciousness and rebuild respect for Vaishnavism, which had gone down at some point in time in the end of the 19th century, He wrote, men of brilliant thoughts have passed by the work of the Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, in the quest of truth and philosophy. But the prejudice which they imbibed from its useless readers and their conduct prevented them from making a candid investigation. He's lamenting in that era, people were not taking the Bhagavad Purana, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seriously because the so-called followers of Mahaprabhu were not giving examples of pious people, of people of good character, of genuine spiritual practitioners. And because of that, people didn't take it seriously. So yet another reason it's essential for us to take the instructions of Queen Kunti very, very seriously. We need to purify our hearts, awaken our love for Krishna, change our behaviors to become model citizens in everything that we do, and thus help spread Lord Chaitanya's teaching around the world. So 3 points just to summarize. Material energy can't make us happy. Queen Kunti's telling us in this and in other verses. We need to hear and chant with faith to purify our hearts and awaken our relationship with Krishna. And if we do so, it should change us internally and externally. And when we do, we become better devotees, we become better citizens, we become better, all the different roles we play. And naturally, the world of self becomes a more decent place, a more sattvic place, a place where people can be attracted to spiritual practice. And as Prabhu says, we become Krishna conscious and we enjoy life with a thrill at every moment. That's one of his wonderful quotes I love so much. He said, just become Krishna conscious and enjoy life with a thrill at every moment. So I'll end there, and thank you all for your kind attention and for being here. I think we've got about 11 minutes left. I don't know if there's some process for taking questions or comments that anybody might like to share at this time. And thank you. And I look forward to hopefully seeing as many as you possible in the same room face-to-face. It's nice to be face-to-face on Zoom, but hopefully someday before too long in the same room. So with the last part, I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for such wonderful words of inspiration and guidance to all of us. We also eagerly look forward to your in-person visit in October. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. So we'll request if any devotee has any comments, any additions or questions, you can raise your hand so Prabhu can answer and we can take advantage of his wonderful association. I think Ramya Prabhu has raised his hand. So Prabhuji, please.
So there's sometimes a conception, not just, Vaishnavas, but other religions as well, that I have joined what's, in my opinion, the best religion, and therefore I am the best person. And they don't actually do any internal work.
Mm-hmm.
So, we say that we have the best philosophy, but that's not the end of it. Could you say anything further on that?
Yeah, thank you. That's one of my pet peeves about the world. There's so many things we could say about that. First of all, when we begin the process of spiritual life, or even we take the big step of getting formally initiated, what's that called? Initiating. It's not called completing, it's called initiating. So when one takes up the process of Krishna consciousness, or later stage when one isn't formally initiated, we're beginning the process of being more serious about our spiritual life. So we shouldn't think, okay, now I'm a devotee, I have some, whatever, a half a penny of clay on my forehead. And so I have a spiritual name, so now I've achieved everything. No, now we've begun. Now we've begun the process. We also know that if we're developing a little bit of spiritual knowledge at all, the first principle of that knowledge, Krishna says in the Gita, is humility. So if I start walking around very proud of myself and of my particular spiritual path, then I'm not understanding that spiritual path, because that spiritual path, Krishna says in the Gita, begins with humility. Also, Prabhu says in the Bhagavad Gita, He says that we should measure ourselves by our progress. It's one of those verses that lists so many different qualities of spiritual advancement. And he says we should have a test by which we measure ourselves to see how we're doing. So we really need to be seen, and I'm not an example of this. I'm struggling to try to become a little better person by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna. But Prabhupada says we should endeavor, and he uses this word as if in military discipline, to practice Krishna consciousness. And that also means we should endeavor to develop these qualities. Now, sometimes it's explained they automatically come by the process of Krishna consciousness. That means we don't have to make an outside endeavor, but we endeavor within the process of Krishna consciousness. Krishna says we should be humble. It doesn't mean I just go around acting puffed up and I'm offensive to people and I think, oh, it's automatically going to come. You know, I'm supposed to practice truthfulness. I take a vow, practice truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, and austerity. But I don't have to be merciful today. It's going to come automatically. I can be cruel and still be a devotee. That's such a sad misunderstanding. And it's Kali Yuga. There's people that go about and claim to be religious adherents all over the world that they kind of think like that. Because I'm this, I'm saved. Because I'm a Vaishnava, I'm okay. It's not that because I'm a Vaishnava, I have all good qualities. It should be because I'm a Vaishnava, I'm endeavoring to develop all good qualities. A very different attitude.
Thank you. Could you say anything further about this tendency we have as conditioned souls to criticize others, to think that, oh, they're not as good as me, or they're not good enough?
Yeah, it arises from the deepest rooted filth in our heart, which is envy. Our tradition teaches at some point way back, immeasurable distance in time or bodies or universes, we somehow desired to be separate from Krishna. Somehow we were envious of Krishna, and now we're envious of others. You know, we want to be like others. We want to have what other people have. We even Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as an example for us, prays that, you know, I'm so envious of other people. Krishna, help me. I'm envious of other people's success. And it's embarrassing to admit, but we all feel that sometimes. You know, we see somebody successful and we're envious. We feel, why them? Why not me? I'm as deserving as they are. And we have to see that this is all, first of all, it's not me. It's not that my soul is by nature envious. I've allowed those conceptions to come into my mind. And through the process of purification and bhakti, I have to control my mind. Just as Prabhupada explains, when we chant japa, we have to, Krishna says too in the Gita, you have to drag the mind back to Krishna. So in the same way, when our mind thinks envious thoughts, we have to drag it back. I'm not this envy. I don't feel that badly about that Prabhu or that Mataji or this person in the office. I reject that thought. I do not want to see that person unhappy. I do not want to see that person suffer. I do not want to take from them what they have. This is not me. I reject that. I'm a servant of Krishna, and I'm very grateful that Krishna is blessing them in so many ways. I want to learn, what I want is to learn to be grateful and appreciate what the Lord's given me as my quota. And that takes some work because we're conditioned, we have habits. So yeah, criticism and Krishna consciousness go nil together, to quote to paraphrase that expression. If we have a critical mind, we have to strive strenuously to get rid of that critical mind. It doesn't mean we don't see shortcomings. We don't see problems. You know, we go to the temple and, you know, the temple's not, you know, we walk in the entranceway and it's not clean. It doesn't mean we're blind to that. Oh, I don't see any problem. But we don't just become critical. Oh, look, the temple room is not clean. Who was supposed to do it? So-and-so, they're lazy. They never come on time. That's the mode of ignorance. We should see, oh, the temple entrance is not clean. Let me clean it. Oh, the temple entrance is not clean. Maybe I could go out and buy some brooms. Oh, the temple entrance is not clean. Maybe I can help design a system. It can be cleaner more often. Maybe I can help enthuse the devotee that's supposed to be doing this service. Maybe I can go find out, maybe they're sick today and they couldn't do it. So let me find others to fill in it. There's so many positive ways when we see some shortcoming that we can engage our mind and our bodies and our words. But just complaining and criticizing, described in the Gita, envy is one of the gateways to hell. It's definitely a gateway to hellish mentality. And, we all suffer from it. Me too. I'm not free from it. I do not, we're not supposed to hate. I think maybe it's okay to hate it when we feel envious, and we should try to overcome it. I see Baswati has her hand up, if I pronounced it right. Can we take a question there?
Yes, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Very nice, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, my question is, how I can sometimes it's challenging to talk to a rigid person who is very rigid in their belief and do not want to be convinced about Krishna consciousness and do not want to be involved. So what's the way of handling with them? Sometimes they are not very kind to when we discuss something to convince them. So what should be the approach from us?
Have you ever met a Christian person that's convinced they're right and you're wrong? A Christian? No, really? You live in Florida?
Yes.
You've never met a Christian?
Yeah, one or two times we got a book, Bible. But
that's fine. But sometimes many of us here, you just as an example, you meet some Christian, a follower of Jesus, who is so convinced that they're right, they practically want to beat you over the head with it. They want to tell you how you're wrong, and they want to tell you how you're right. And most of us, we don't react so good to that, isn't it? Now, if a Christian comes up and says, "Oh, I notice you're a Hare Krishna. That's a wonderful thing you're doing. I don't know much about it. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do? Oh, you're cultivating mercy and compassion. And oh, that's very nice." My book, also the Bible, it also tells me that we should learn to be humble and we should learn to be free from pride. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Maybe we can help each other make progress on the spiritual path. See, that's what they call interfaith dialogue. Even just two people on a bus, that's a beautiful thing, because through that contact, you're encouraging each other to take the next step towards God. But if the Christian tries to beat us over the head with it, or the Hare Krishna tries to be insistent, "Oh, you have to do this, you have to take it up," we close our ears, we run the other way. So we have to make sure we're delivering the message in the mood of love. And also we should be practical. Some people, you go in Harinam, you present them a book, they stop. "Oh, this is wonderful. Tell me all about it." So you give them so much. Other people, they walk by, "No, thank you." Okay. But you can say, "Have a nice day, ma'am. Hare Krishna." That's all she can take. And you've helped her by chanting. So we have to become expert spiritual doctors. A doctor knows, they bring in one patient, they say, "Okay, open heart surgery immediately." Same cardiologist, they bring in another patient, he says, "Oh, you have to put them in the ward, you have to put them on oxygen, you have to resuscitate, you have to try to strengthen them." They're not ready. Maybe they need open heart surgery, but they're not ready for it. So the doctor is an expert judge of time and place. So we have to be, in all humility, try to give people as much Krishna as they can take, but not think that we're the supreme controller and we can just force Krishna down people's throats. Sometimes, like at work, maybe at work, people don't like you to talk about Krishna. Okay. I guarantee you they like cookies made at home and offered to Krishna, isn't it? There's always ways to attract people. Some people, I'll tell you this, and I have to actually join another conference call. Maybe I can just share one story. I was at the Denver temple about 2 years ago. I went back to visit, and there was a nice, I spoke with this young woman, maybe she was 25 or 30. I was noticing in Kirtan how much she seemed to just love Kirtan. You could just tell. She loved the chanting, the dancing. And at the end, I sat down with her during the Sunday feast, and I started to tell her. She was saying, oh, I just love chanting. I said, yes, the reason we love chanting is because it's non-different from Krishna's name. Krishna's name is non-different from God himself. And then she said, I don't believe in God. I was shocked. I've been seeing this person dance and chant, and she'd been there a few times. I don't believe in God. I just know I like the chanting. Okay. Now I could have continued to try to convince her, wait a minute, today I could quote so many verses from the Bhagavad Gita to try to convince her philosophically. What's the point? She loves chanting. So let me encourage her to chant. Let me encourage her to take prasadam. And gradually Krishna will reveal himself to her. So I'll end with this. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said that our preaching is to remove the obstacles between a person and Krishna. Some people, you say God's the Supreme Father, they recoil because they had such a bad experience with their own father. They don't want to hear about a father. Okay? Other people, they don't want anything to do with anything spiritual, but they'll take prasadam. Some people will take the kirtan. Some people love the philosophy. They don't like the kirtan. Some people love the deities, but they don't want to hear philosophy. Some people just want to wash pots, but they don't want to preach to them. Some people, no way am I going to wash any pots, but I'll come and listen to a lecture. So we have to be the servant of the servant of the servant and know that every single soul is connected to Krishna. Every soul, there's something blocking their connection to Krishna. And pray to him, please help me understand this person's heart, understand what they need, so I can help them come one step closer to you. And if we have that mood, Krishna will give us, he'll give us the means. And if we make a mistake, we say the wrong thing, then we learn. Next time we meet someone like that, we do a little differently. We speak differently. Okay? Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. And I do apologize that it's been an hour, so probably most of you need to go do other things. And I also have to join a meeting, a New Vrindavan meeting right now. And I do hope to get a chance to see all of you. I've talked with me. I'm trying to plan a trip to be down there for a few days for my purification to have your association. So I hope that's able to work out. So I'm getting beeps on my phone telling me, are you coming to the call? So Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Krishna, thank you.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Hare
Krishna, thank you very much.
Haribo,
Thank you,
Haribo.
Prabhuji. Haribo.
Bye, Prabhupada.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.